got so much work to do. Oh my God. I have so much to talk about, and I have not that much time to talk about them. So I'm really gonna try to hit on the main points for each book that I read. And I am a modern ajumma. I've been in my busy season. I'm in a rush, but I'm gonna try to calm down. And I want to calm down because I really do want to talk about the 16 books that I read in the month of March. March. Deep breaths. Okay, because I'm in a rush, I didn't pre-outline what order I should talk about these books in, so I'm just going to go in the order that I put into my notes. Really quickly, I read Murder is Easy by Agatha Christie as a reread because I'm noticing that there are several audiobooks that are recent. I read Murder is Easy, a reread, the last time in 2022 as another audiobook, which was read by Hugh Fraser, who plays Hastings in the series. But in 2020, Gemma Whelan narrated Murder is Easy. If you don't know her, she's a British actress, most notably, I guess, from Game of Thrones. She played, was it Yara? Like the Greyjoy sister, badass sister. And I found her voice to be so delightful for this audiobook. I want to say the newly released audiobooks are because of these like new crops of miniseries adaptations that have been coming out. Like for Murder is Easy in particular, it was like the BritBox one, I think, with, blanking on his name, but the main actor is Gus from Industry, which I really enjoy. Like out of all these like recent TV shows, that's gotta be high up there. Definitely like, is my hair falling out? Definitely, I feel like Industry is the underdog of all of the new TV series lately. Like not enough people are watching it. I feel like they should. But yeah, I had so much high hopes for that Murder is Easy miniseries. I love the Gus actor. I love, names. The Ingrid, the Rings of Power Galadriel actress. But I just felt like that miniseries felt off, like compared to Knives Out, which is essentially an Agatha Christie by another name. That one is such a chef's kiss, like what is perfect about Agatha Christie stories. Ryan, names! I'm forgetting everybody's name today, but he really knows how to hit that Agatha Christie key just right. And also the 2009 series episode for Marple with like Benedict Cumberbatch. Of all the names, I remember his. It was a stacked cast, but hands down, the best adaptation for the title Murder is Easy. Kind of deviates from the book story, but it all works. Hands down fave episode of either of the Poirots and Marples of all time for me personally. Anyway, I thought that Gemma Whelan was a great audio performer for Murder is Easy. I thoroughly enjoyed this reread experience, even though when I reread it last time back in only 3 years ago, I think I gave it like 2 stars because of like the dumb man, like the homophobia. Was there racism? I'm sure there was. But this time, like this reread, I saw that I was always supposed to be infuriated by the dumb man. And it's just a fun way of telling a story how nobody listens to women. Let's just go straight down the list, baby. I read An Honest Woman, a memoir of love and sex work by Charlotte Shane. This came out in 2024. I read it as a library audio read by Caitlin Kelly. This is a first-person account of what patriarchal standards look like IRL. Like she had her divorced dad trauma dumping on her when she was 7 years old because in our current patriarchal structure, men expect women to take all their bullshit and listen to them and take care of them, like regardless of age. Girls are just seen as caretakers. I have to say, as a parent, I'm really happy to see, at least in my little square of the world, it's not exactly the case. So many mothers are teaching their daughters to not take any bullshit and to be themselves and not take on that burden of being the obligatory caretaker. However, we can't deny that this is still very much a thing in general. But yeah, going back to Charlotte Shane, how much her father obsessed over her sexual normalcy and making sure that her having boyfriends who are deemed alpha males reflects his own normalcy as an alpha male. I really appreciated her talking about her complicated relationship with one of her long-term clients. Like, she has no connection to him and his life on paper, but not even, you could say, really emotionally, because it's not like they were both in love with each other, but very much on a practical, logistical way, they were very much a part of each other's lives. And when things happen in life, as it is wont to do, she has no tether to him in any real meaningful way, and nor he to her. So overall, I found this to be a very intimate, very personal portrayal of a life of sex work, like what it can look like, how it can be. Simply told, but very, like vibey in its own way. It didn't feel like just being good at a job. It felt like being good at being a woman. I read this because it was one of the 3 books that Gia Tolentino recommended for like her best top 3 books that she personally recommended over the course of 2024. The other one was Rejection, and the other was Limitarianism. And now I have read all 3. I can legitimately stamp my approval to definitely the first 2, because I put Limitarianism. Wait, did I read Limitarianism this year or last year? Well, I'm pretty sure it's definitely going to be in my best of 2025 reads. It just, once it entered my brain, it's never gonna leave. It's one of those like paradigm shifting books that I'm always going to think about. Rejection by Tony Tulatamudi. I remember his name, but not all the other ones. That book was just so like memorable in its own way. It was very much of a shock to your system, to say the least. Yeah, just an indefatigable, oh, that word. Indefatigable. Did I say that right? This is why I need to do less and move slower, because sometimes you just have to say no to some things and not yes, and overfill your plate all at once so that you can do everything on your list 100%. That's just a little self-pep talk. But yes, I see how this 3rd edition to Tolentino's 3 recommendations of books would be like the sleeper choice of the 3. However, I do think that it firmly belongs in the 3 slots. I really did enjoy it, but enjoying is not the right word. It's like I very much appreciated it, and it is something now that I am post Anora. I just watched Anora. I'm still not emotionally recovered from that movie. It was so good. I feel like Anora does a little bit more than An Honest Woman. Perhaps like if you also seen Anora, or maybe just like go see Anora. I highly recommend that movie. And once you've seen Anora, maybe read An Honest Woman and kind of compare and contrast. Like, I'm already hearing so much. First of all, like, no notes for Anora from me. I found it to be perfection. I don't agree at all that it's too slow or boring. However, I do think that An Honest Woman is more on the slow and boring end, but nevertheless, still very worthy of a read. And another Libby audiobook that I read is When Women Ran Fifth Avenue, Glamour and Power at the Dawn of American Fashion by Julie Satow, which also came out in 2024. This audiobook was read by Karen Murray, and I'm pretty sure I read this because it was one of the books that was in the Goodreads like year-end nominees for something, maybe like historical, no, for nonfiction. My Libby audio came in. I read it. This is essentially a historical rundown of like a handful of women who ended up running department stores during like the early to mid 20th century. I really should have found this to be much more interesting because I happen to work in a department store, and I am one of the very few people to find retail business fascinating because you have so much of the human element to work with. That's usually the reason why most people hate retail business. But I didn't personally find this to be particularly well written. Like, I found the cues to gasp at designer name drops, you know, as if their mention warrants delight and familiarity to be really eye-rolling. And I think the overall intended takeaway of this book is like how unfair that women were overlooked in the workplace when they clearly proved merit. A little too no shit Sherlock for me. The only reason why I'm glad to have read this is I had no idea that the IRL Hortense was the inspiration to my very beloved, probably my all-time favorite old classic Hollywood film, The Women, and just getting to hear, constantly hear a great classic, very much died out name. Like, no one names their kid Hortense anymore. It's a shame. I mean, I get it, but it's a shame. So do I recommend it? Not particularly, unless that's very much like your sort of thing too. In the end, I was like, oh, these women existed. Okay. You know what I mean? I read The Reckoning by Edith Wharton. I have so many of these Penguin Little Black classics that I've been ignoring. As you can see, they're all in, you know, this is a Little Black Classics and this is the modern Little Classics. There are two sets. I have both of them. I have not been really reading any of them, and I really should. So I just picked the Edith Wharton one, and this was nice. Mrs. Manstey's View is one of the short stories included in this, which I found to be like the perfect encapsulation of Wharton's POV in life, her paradox. It's like a very elegant story with a very Daria-esque womp womp ending. Una Van Sitteren is such a Wharton-esque name. Yeah, this was my attempt to make a dent into this box that I have to read, but I was charmed by Edith Wharton's sparkle. However, Debbie Downer. I read Colored Television by Danzy, Senna, which came out in 2024. I got a Libby Skip the Line audiobook, which was read by Kristen Ariza. This was very much a compulsive read. I finished this within the day, and I think it was about like 8 hours long. But just every detail in this novel, while being a little on the melodramatic side, felt so true to life. There's a detail of a wife telling her husband how something bad happened, and he's like sympathizing with her. He's fixing a instant mac and cheese for dinner, and she assumes that he's doing this to feed their kids so that she doesn't have to do it and worry about it. But then he ends up just eating it all by himself. And I was just like, she gets it. She gets it. There's a scene of her daughter bawling over an American Girl doll, and you think that it's going somewhere. Like, you think that racism is going to be talked about, but Senna is so good. She takes it to another place entirely. She brings up class, which is the root of racism. If you don't know it by now, let me keep repeating myself about that. This book does that book thing where the writer takes these essential truths and packages it so wonderfully, so beautifully, in such a fun, accessible way. Like, you're having fun while also acknowledging all of these essential truths. I really enjoyed this, if you couldn't tell. This is my first time reading a Danzy Senna book. I think that she's the partner of Percival Everett, and they are a writer couple who essentially both write literary fiction that speaks on race and class. And for all of the hype that James got for Percival Everett last year, I truly think it's a crime that no one I've at least that I've seen, has talked about color television. This book is great. Is it talking about like loftier things that we currently care about in the book world, such as historical retellings? It is the equivalent of the man making the like neoclassical religious paintings, whereas female painters are relegated to like still lifes and shit. Senna is writing about like family life and family dynamics, which has essentially become like the chick lit of lit fic. And I loved it. I loved the shit out of this. I loved how this book spoke of marriage between two creative individuals and what the burden of kids look like. It always falls on the mom. I love these characters, even though I don't agree with any of them. Like, I wanted her to divorce her husband, get a clue. But it's never as simple as that, right? But yeah, I just the whole time could not stop thinking about how Senna chose to write about an overworked woman in this world while her husband wrote about slavery. And of course, everyone's talking about the slavery book. Like, the prestige is in that and not about everyday women. Go read it. Go read it. I read Dog Songs by Mary Oliver. I'm endeavoring to read like one book of poetry a month. I'm endeavoring to do a lot this year, and one of them is to read more poetry, and I'm goaling myself for one a month. This month's pick is Dog Songs. I also was inspired to read this after seeing Melissa's vlogs. She was on a kick of reading literature on dogs and cats and animals, pets. And I just found this to be lovely, a really refreshing change of pace. I also read this to climb out of a reading slump that I was feeling myself hurtling towards, and Eleanor suggested reading poetry to get out of it. She suggested Linda Gregg's poetry. I have it on my library hold, but I already had this Mary Oliver, so I read this with those intentions, and it definitely did the trick. Thank you very much, Eleanor, for this fantastic suggestion. I also think, did I directly message or just comment in something? But with Cass, I was saying how, because I think Cass was saying she's also trying to read more poetry, and it's just been a little hard to articulate like our thoughts about the reading experience. And I was saying that reading poetry, you can never go wrong, because at worst, it acts as a great palate cleanser to your reading diet, and at best it serves as a rejuvenation of the love for language that we all have. There is a lot of white space in this book, but it is justifiable. It deserves it all. It earns its paper. This is essentially a beautiful ode to dog companionship and joys of a life with dogs. It is very obvious that Mary Oliver loves dogs, and she gets what it's like. And there are some really lovely, delicate hatched pen and ink drawings by John Burgoyne. Listen, a junkyard puppy learns quickly how to dream. Listen, whatever you see and love, that's where you are. Or maybe it's about the wonderful things that may happen if you break the ropes that are holding you. Tell me you love me, he says. Tell me again. Could there be a sweeter arrangement? Over and over he gets to ask. I get to tell. For he was a mixture of gravity and waggery. For often I see his shape in the clouds, and this is a continual blessing. Those are just some lines that I lifted from like multiple poems throughout this book that I wanted to read for you. I read Filterworld, How Algorithms Flattened Culture by Chayka. This came out in 2024, and I read it as a Libby audio, read by Kaleo Griffith. So I hated this book, but I think this was one of the books that like really pulled me out of my slump because of how much I was resonating with it in the negative, but like also in a good way. I mean, still, I'm unsure what the takeaway for this book is supposed to be, other than that algorithms are bad and that things used to be better back in the day, back in his day, when we all used to have our own personalities. Like, that is very much a Gen Xy narrative that I've been hearing from several like culture makers. What are they called? Like, you know, people who lead in trendsetters. Oh my god. from like certain Gen X trendsetters like Sofia Coppola. I remember during some award season a couple years ago, maybe, when she was lamenting over all of the usage of personal stylists and how everyone looks the way that they do now. Like everyone's essentially doing the same thing. And she was saying how no one has their own personality anymore and what a shame that is. Like no one's doing something just because they like it and it's working for them. Everyone's doing something because they're paid to do it, and it all feels very disingenuous, which I'm not necessarily disagreeing with. However, that like snooty tone that's intrinsic in this critique is very much something that I bristle at, and I found the same tone in Filterworld. Like the implicit tone of this book is that, what's his name? Chayka has superior taste, and it's a shame on the rest of us that we are so uncultured and have to rely on AI to know what to listen to, and we have to rely on influencers to tell us what's cool, and that we're all just basically followers. No, thanks. Just nothing that he said in this whole book was very thought-provoking. Everything he used as like a citation, you know, like things that are going on right now in our current events, I could immediately see where he was going to take it, and he did. And he also said it in a way where like it's news to us, like we don't know that this is going on, as if we aren't living in the world that we're all living in right now. You know, this is just like when Martin Scorsese had his rant in, what was it, Harper magazine, about movies becoming content instead of art, and that was one of Chayka's examples. So for all of this, I meet it with the same "so what" response. Like for this argument and just Chayka's argument in general, I just find it to be so judgmental, and I just have no sympathy, because if the end result is that more people can enjoy art and culture, no matter how diluted it may be, I'm all for that. Like, this is an interesting debate to have. Like, tell me what you think. Like, I find the same argument coming from like the old white dudes proclaiming that 70s rock is the only real music. Ultimately, I'm always gonna side on the camp that older people need to let the fuck go and let the younger people decide, no matter how vehemently we may disagree. And yes, I said we. So I just wish that Chayka had more to his argument other than raise awareness and hysteria for the decline in quality. I'd be all ears, but there isn't. He didn't. Like, don't get me wrong, there is a very strong debate to be had about algorithm regulations, striking the balance between convenience and manipulation. But Chayka never once takes it there. And instead, he talks about how cool he used to be in his youth for like finding obscure songs to rip into his own burned CD playlists. Yeah, I can't say that I recommend this book. I find this to be for a very specific demographic, which is millennial hipsters, of which I belong. And I personally really enjoyed the hate read. I read No Fault, a memoir of romance and divorce by Haley Mlotek. Oh no, is that how you say her name? Mlotek, which came out this year as a Libby audio, which was read by the author. So this book I have been seeing making the rounds of a very specific type of booktuber or a bookstagrammer, like the very thinky litfic feminist type of who I want to be a part of. And perhaps this is biased after like being fresh out of the very judgmental Filterworld, but I found this to be so refreshingly objective. Like, cue the emotional woman joke here. Of course she's emotional on the subject of her own divorce, but what I loved about this book is how supremely meditative it is on the subject of divorce itself. Like, I don't think that anyone goes into a marriage wanting a divorce. I don't think that people should stay married for the petty sake of avoiding divorce. And I think that divorce is inherently sad, despite its end result of freedom. But I also think that sadness shouldn't be avoided because it is a part of life. I'm thinking about all of the women who are choosing to get married later if they do decide to get married. All these like living alone YouTube blog series or like YouTube channels, which are mostly populated by young single women. I find these to be all good signs. I'm finding the existence of this book to be a good sign for the sake of society. Yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I would highly recommend it regardless of your thoughts on divorce. Grief opens the direction of our minds, takes us to ideas that might have seemed strange in the light of earlier days. Suddenly, we're willing to recite incantations to raise the dead, or affirmations to raise our self-esteem. We are lost to the cursed idea of closure, thinking the people who can help us are the people who hurt us. A week earlier, maybe we would have said we didn't believe in the afterlife, or hardcovers featuring pop psychologists crossing their arms under an embossed title. Then we lost the quality of certainty. Now we see how stupid that certainty was. And so who can say what's real and what's possible? Not us. Oh, so good. Okay, now we're getting into what really pulled me out of my slump. I read Once Upon a Time, The Captivating Life of Carolyn Bessette Kennedy by Elizabeth Beller, which came out in 2024. I read this as a Libby audiobook, which was read by Emily Tremaine. I fucking hated this book so much, but you can clearly tell that I loved the reading experience of it. By she, I mean the writer, is the kind of person who would watch Mean Girls and find nothing objectionable about the plastics. Like, even the voice and performance of Tremaine was very Valley Girl tinged, really leaning in. The way that Beller just kept waxing on and on about how beautiful Carolyn was, how kind Carolyn was, how misunderstood Carolyn was, how much her friends loved Carolyn. I was like, whoa, Beller, get a room. And this book serves as a great reminder for critical thinking, like both in the part for Beller and on us as a reader. This book very much reads as a privileged white woman calling unfairness and misogyny for one of her own. This was extremely black and white mentality. Like, Carolyn is only good, and all of the people who are calling her vain and heinous couldn't possibly be correct, because look at the receipts. Her friends are definitely saying she was the best after her death. This was so nauseating. And the case for sympathy is downright ugly. I completely stopped taking this book seriously around like the 25% mark when Beller was saying that the PR girls of fashion brands like Carolyn, who was a PR for Calvin Klein, like Beller called them the original influencers, like GTFO. So don't consider this a book about Carolyn Bessette Kennedy. Think of this as a book about how much Elizabeth Beller loves Carolyn Bessette Kennedy and wish that they were BFFs. Isn't it so funny how even though you absolutely hate a book, like, it still brings such a big smile to your face? Is it just me? Am I just a hater? I can't be the only one. I would say just read this book just for laughs. I read The Possession by Annie Erneaux as a Libby ebook. This came out in 2003, and I read it like in one day, probably in one sitting, after watching Sophie's video when she was talking about Exteriors by Annie Erneaux. This is Ajuma's first Erneaux. I've never read her before. I tried to get Exteriors, but The Possession is what was immediately available on Libby for me. I thought it was fine. Very short, 60 pages of a woman spiraling over a man who is leaving her for another woman. Writing like this is never about the plot, always for the vibes, the artistry, the sentence structure, which I'm always drawn towards for my own self-centered purposes. Like, how can I write my diary better? Because this is a diary, like episodic diary of a book, I think. Yeah, just reading writers like Erneaux makes you question how you can look at things differently and describe them in a more nuanced way. Yeah, no answers for me at this point. I'm just like knowing that I should expose myself to it more. It's kind of refreshing reading this style of stiff but European prose which I found to be like equally florid and abrupt, like the simultaneously soft and hard. At that moment, I realized that ass, in this case, the ass of the other woman, was the most important thing in the world. Today, it makes me right. I read Pok Pok Noodles, Recipes from Thailand and Beyond by Andy Ricker. This is obviously a library book. This came out in 2019, and I only read this not with any inclination to cook from. I watched the Thailand episode of Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown, which features Andy Ricker, and I was just curious to see what this guy is like on paper. And just in the, 30 minutes on screen of a single episode from a TV series, he instantly reminded me of someone that I used to know. Like, kind of creepy, but there's a lot of depth in there. So I wanted to read what he was really like. Like, I wanted to get to know Andy Ricker a little bit more. I saw this at the library and I just read it for that purpose. And I'm unsurprised. Ricker goes hard unapologetically. We have single servings, unfamiliar ingredients, zero excuses tolerated. Like, he doesn't want you to use the rooster sriracha, but like Thai sriracha, and yes, it's different. So I learned a lot about Thai cuisine and culture, but I also really felt like I was being schooled by a disciplinarian who is adamant that I pay proper respect to this culture and its traditions. I still disliked him, but not in the lecherous way that I assumed. He's just too relentless. Like, he's the guy who will tell me that I'm a dirty cash for preferring Radiohead's In Rainbows and the Benz albums as opposed to like the Superior Kid A or OK Computer albums. Like, he's the guy who votes blue and hates war criminals, but he also corrects my grammar. I used to love this type of beta male intellectual hipster guy during the 2010s. Feels nice to know that I've moved on. I'm still unable to articulate my thoughts on like these white men cooking Asian food, no matter how much they love and admire the culture. Like, on one hand, I see their sincerity. My complaint, if anything, is that they're too self-serious. But, I'm also uncomfortable that we're still needing like the white guy to introduce these things to wider audiences. I'm still finding that concept to be totally bizarre. And what really is the matter is I can't take seriously the smart, thoughtful, well-crafted approach, which is like westernizing Eastern culture. Ick. I read Show Don't Tell by Curtis Sittenfeld. This is a collection of short stories that just came out this year. This is obviously a library book. This was a fun one. This is popcorn. This is very white, upper middle class, but Midwestern, woman POV with its corresponding type of topics. But I very much enjoy them and very much fit into that demographic. Just a PSA, half of these stories also feature in Help Yourself, which is a much slimmer collection of short stories that I think that came out in 2020, and no one really knows about this. It's probably meant that way because I think she was really saving all of them for this bigger, more substantial collection of short stories. Like, this is much more fleshed out. I found all of the stories to be equally mildly thought-provoking, perfect escapism from this month's headlines, but still like, I don't know, kind of patting yourself on the back for it still being self-aware. Yeah, I read like one or two at a time during my kids' taekwondo practice, sitting in the car. This is extremely mom coded, like mom rating coded. If you've read Prep by Curtis Sittenfeld, her prep school novel, there's a prep epilogue story in this as well, so that's not to miss. Yeah, all in the theme of like her woke post-pandemic introspective musings, of which I'm a fan. This is Charlotte York in a book. One of the surprises of adulthood has been that, as the years pass, it has become less rather than more clear to me whether I'm a good or bad person. This may have been the single biggest difference between my teenage self and my middle-aged self, that I'd once been roiling with thoughts and opinions and yearnings that I suspected were strange or shameful or simply inexpressible, and therefore didn't express them. As I got older, it wasn't the thoughts and opinions and yearnings that went away, only over time their suppression. And also this sentence made me realize that I'm just bad at social skills and consciously don't want to fix it. It was a reflexive acknowledgement that they both possess good social skills, but it didn't have to do with recognizing anything particular in each other. And what I mean by that is just, I don't know if I come across this way, but I'm actually a very awkward person in real life, and I know that about myself. I know what I'm doing to make myself so awkward. I just choose not to do anything about it, and that's just who I am. And before this, I was never really able to articulate all of that in a feeling. Yeah, I enjoyed this. If you're a Curtis Sittenfeld fan, this is definitely not to be missed. There are some hefty stories in here. It's a good time. I read The Artist's Palette, The Palettes Behind the Paintings of 50 Great Artists by Alexandra Loske. This came out last year in 2024. I thought that I should mix it up. It's been a while since my headspace has delved into like the art and painting practice. This is a capital A art book, and it's wonderful. It's almost like a making of featurette for paintings in a book. So for example, for Rembrandt, Loske shows you like a really nice color reproductions for all of them, first of all, but a self-portrait that the painter has done, and you can kind of see like their palette layout and what colors that they use. But what I loved is the proportional breakdown of the painting palette of like what colors were used. She also tries to fit in like a quote either said by the painter or someone saying of the painter describing their practice. There's usually like a photograph of the physical palette if available, but for example for Rembrandt it's like a recreation of Rembrandt's actual palette, like a tour of their physical palette. So this book is just all about the painting practice, which I found to be extremely inspiring, very illuminating, very interesting and insightful. I love seeing all of these palette scans of all of these different artists. Yeah, I highly recommend this to be added to anyone's art book collection. I mean, it's beautiful in every way. It's even got this canvas spine, very thoughtfully and well made. I liked this quote that Rainer Maria Rilke said about Paul Cézanne, and Rilke was a big fan of Cézanne's. No one before him has ever shown so clearly how much painting depends on what happens between colors, and that one has to leave them completely alone so that they can communicate with each other. The interaction of color. This is the whole of the art of painting. Yeah, I really appreciated how Loske implies a sense of each painter's personality by talking about their palette, their method, the subjects of their work, and in that way provides like a fuller picture to the artist that I never previously thought about before. If you're into art, I definitely recommend this. I read It's Not Hysteria, Everything You Need to Know About Your Gynecological Health But Were Never Told by Karen Tang, MD, MPH. This also came out in 2024, and it was also a Goodreads nominee for nonfiction, I think. I read this as a library audio read by the author. And if you were born in a female body, you may have fibroids, PCOS, or endometriosis. This is a very clinical book. I learned so much. There are normal functional cysts, but I guess if abnormal cysts exist, logically so must normal. I'm just going to show you the contents, the table of contents, so you can see what kinds of things are discussed in this book. And I really do appreciate how much she starts from the beginning to the very basics and then builds upon that. I remembered reading in my like college biology 101 textbook, you know, like the definition of the human body. It was bolded and it had this definition next to it, and someone highlighted it. As if we don't know what a human body is already, but I really do appreciate that she starts from those very simple basics, because once like we're all on the same page, we can go from there. And I'm saying this because my overall biggest takeaway is that there are so many variables within the body that just exist with no judgment. It just is or it isn't. It's there or it's not. And it is overwhelming. So politicizing and arguing over a few cherry-picked ones, at the end of the day, it's just silly. But also, at the end of the day, human beings have chosen to live in a society of government ruled by popularity and not logic. And currently, it is very unpopular to adhere to logic. In this case, doctors who are experts on the body, in the study of the body, and instead, some people are demanding that we listen to their emotions about our bodies. I think reading this text will be time well spent in learning more about the body, whether that body is yours or not. I read Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. This book came out in 2017. I read this for Ben's Read Good Challenge for the month of March. It's like the Ides of March, 15 letters, which Hurricane Season happily fit the criteria for. This is my second Melchor. I love Fernanda Melchor. How does she write like this? It is absolute magic. The saddest, realist magic. I thought this with Paradise. I thought this again for Hurricane Season. Melchor writes and says the same things that Elena Ferrante says, but in a much more concise and, dare I say, more devastating way. Fernanda Melchor makes Elena Ferrante come across as an operatic, genteel melodrama for suburban housewives. Like, I thought of everything that I've been avoiding from seeing Sean Baker's movies. And I finally saw Anora after, like, all of its wins. I was finally moved to see it. It was just as realistically sad as I anticipated. Highlighting the tragedies of everyday life because of inequality. But probably like a more accurate film pairing is Gaspar Noé's Irreversible, because of like the backtracking of time, like the sad, hard to watch themes of everyday adversities, injustice and cruelty from like those in positions of power who are supposedly there to protect. I also read this month a really sad and searing New Yorker article by Ronan Farrow about a serial rapist being protected by the town law enforcement because of the money that he brings in through his local business. So Fernanda Melchor writes about things that we already know, like the things that we see in the news, with equal parts harsh light of truth, like there's no sugarcoating from her, and beautiful human empathy for everyone involved without ever going into gratuitous territory. Like, it is so hard to find that balance to strike, like the right tone of talking about a hard subject matter, but still making it beautiful without cheapening its integrity or just ruining it in any other way. I love Fernanda Melchor. I'll say it again. I strongly recommend giving her a go if you haven't yet. I might like Hurricane Season a little bit more than Paradise, although they're pretty neck and neck. Yeah, new favorite author unlocked. And lastly, I read American Bulk, Essays on Excess by Emily Mester, which came out in 2024. I read this as a library audio read by Chloe Cannon. This Libby hold came through like on the tail end of March. I wasn't sure if I would read it during March. I figured I would just start it and then maybe add it to my April reads, but like, oh boy, I blasted through this book. This is very much my alley. It's a memoir of Mester's life as like an upper middle class American, talking about very Americana things like bulk shopping, like bulk quantities at Costco, shopping and working at the mall, store rewards programs, because she used to work at Ulta, highbrow, lowbrow perceptions, such as Olive Garden food. And she talks about these topics all in purpose to highlight the absurdities of our 4 ways, whatever they may be, like whether you're red or blue, in a low or high income bracket. She also talks about like different kinds of extreme hoarding, like material clutter or frugality. Like she talks about her grandmother having actually a lot of money, but she is so frugal and she's hoarding money as opposed to hoarding things, although she did hoard things as well. Obesity could also be included in this extreme hoarding category. Just our addiction to accumulation. This isn't at all the book that I thought it'd be. Like I had perceptions of this being more in like the pop science genre, but it being a memoir at its core, I think provides a much more stronger backbone to this book because it makes it more relatable. I immediately knew that this book would be 5 stars for me. For if anything, I am eternally grateful to Mester for talking about Virginia Woolf in a way that I could finally understand. If you don't know, ever since I first read Virginia Woolf, which was only a couple of years ago, I had immediate visceral negative reactions because I just found her way too first wave feminist to be relevant today, and her flowery prose, which is beautiful, I grant you, to serve more as an insidious mask covering her true capitalist pro-caste system ideals. But I see now, thank you to Emily Mester, that that's all coming from my own personal inherent like blue collar background foundation. And so of course I'm gonna feel at odds against her wealthy upper class viewpoints. Not to make everything about Anora, but I really do love that movie. It is so good. But like, of course Vanya's mother was never going to accept Annie. Of course Annie was naive for even considering the possibility because she is legally her daughter-in-law. And of course it takes a fellow cast member like Igor, who is older and more experienced, to immediately clock all of this. So I just really enjoyed this book in every way. I loved how Mester spoke of all of these things. One thing that I really found insightful is when Mester was talking about her fat camp experiences, and when she was talking with a nutritionist and was telling the nutritionist about the things that she eats, the nutritionist told her that it's very interesting because she could afford to eat better, but she is choosing to eat poorly, like both poor in terms of nutrition and poor in economics. Like people who can't afford any better eat the things that are unhealthy for you because those are the cheapest options. Wealth and culture had been put in a blender and we all sat in the same soup. The only brow that seemed to remain, the only one there had ever been, was the small furrowed one that still cared to debate its own meaning. I highly recommend. Oh, I did it. I did it in time. So I had a really good reading month of March because of both like the really good books and the really bad books that I enjoyed hating on. And that seems to be the winning combo. So that's what I recommend for all of you if you are also finding yourself sliding down a slump, to first of all palate cleanse with some poetry, read some really good books, and then read some really hateful books that like is gonna get your blood flowing, like your blood pumping, your blood boiling. Like I said in the beginning, I'm speeding into my busy season. I'm so busy this week. And then next week I'm going on a family vacation. And then it's just event after event after event. So I have no idea how much I'm going to be able to read for the month of April. But I'm glad that I'm feeling better. Because not going to lie, February was quite a low point. Like not because of numbers or anything, just like I wasn't feeling it. And like it's feeling harder and harder to just get these monthly wrap-ups out. It isn't for any lack of desire. It's just like I said, I need to start saying no to more things so that I can do what I've already committed to better. So that's where I'm at. And I hope that all of you are doing okay, both in life, in your reading, in all that you endeavor to do. Just make sure that it's not too much, because then you're going to stress yourself out. And with that, I will see you when I see you. And as always, If you have any opinions, any thoughts on anything that I've said on any of these books mentioned, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. Like that Filterworld book, oof. Have any of you read that Elizabeth Beller book about Carolyn Bessette Kennedy? Like, I want to know. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.